Welcome to Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, where we discuss how to break into the performing arts industry for yourself or your child, teen, or young adult. Guests include artists, creatives, casting directors, musical directors, choreographers, agents and managers, as well as parents of professional actor, singers, and dancers, all who are passionate and share my vision of helping talented individuals land professional representation and have successful careers in the arts. My name is Lisa Solek, and I am the CEO and founder of Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, having helped hundreds of clients break into the business on stage, in films, television, commercial work, and more. This podcast is supplemental to my groundbreaking online courses, Professional Kids and Teens 101, a primer for parents, and Professional Biz 201 for young adults, college students, and graduates. For more information, check out all the ways that you can benefit from my courses, programs, free weekly newsletter, and free guides. Go to lbctalent.com or lbctalent.thinkific.com. My guest today is Meg Paul. Hi, Meg. How are you?
Hi, Lisa.
I'm so glad that you could come on to the podcast today. I'm thrilled to talk to you. I can't wait for our listeners to hear your story. I really think it's going to be very helpful to many of them of all ages. You've been in the industry for many, many years, and your career has kind of, been in all different aspects of the industry, which is very exciting. And I love the fact that you also are in that educational piece too, and not just the performance side of it. So that's going to be fun to kind of get your take on students and what and how maybe they should be in the room. Like those types of things will be cool to talk about. But let's start at the beginning. I would love to know, and I'm sure the listeners would love to know, when did you know that you were a performer at heart? Like, were you little? Were you really young? When did you realize it, or did you realize it at a young age? And did you have support from like parents and family?
Well, thank you so much for having me first off. And I love this platform and what you're doing with it. So it's really valuable. I wish it had been there for us when,
I know.
this is way back when obviously no computers, no cell phones, and stuff like that. So it's really great.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to share my story. I started ballet because my friend in Brownies was taking ballet. So we went together. It was a thing that we did as friends. And she decided to quit like halfway through the year. And of course, I was following along and wanted to quit. My mother was like, you committed to the year. Let's fulfill that commitment, which was one of the first greatest lessons of like, sort of sticking to your commitment, right? Because sometimes it's going to get rocky or sometimes things come up, right? But sticking to that commitment, at least for the year. And in that remaining part of the year, I fell in love. I fell in love with ballet. I fell in love with dance because I started to understand just the feeling that I had when I accomplished something, or the challenges were really interesting to me. And so I was 7 years old. I just fell in love with dance, and I was fortunate enough to train in a studio that had us training in all forms of dance. I took African dance, tap, jazz, modern, and of course ballet. And I was at Southern Ballet Theater in Central Florida, which is now Orlando Ballet.
Okay.
So I was training at the School of Performing Arts, and then was part of in sort of the pre-professional program of Southern Ballet Theater, where I met one of my greatest mentors, Russell Sulzbach, who used to be with the Joffrey Ballet. And he was down guest teaching, and he was teaching me how to turn in class, and I was really getting it. And he pulled me aside and he said, listen, I think you need to you need to be seen in New York. I'm calling Edith Daddario at the Joffrey Ballet School, and I'm recommending that you go there for the summer. So he really saw something in me. And it was that, like you were saying, that sort of cosmic moment of coming upon somebody and them recognizing it and giving me that real first big break. So he calls up Edith Daddario, sight unseen. I get full scholarship to the Joffrey School in New York City. And, my mother and we weren't of great means. So we had garage sales, and I cleaned toilets and bathrooms for my tuition, in dance.
I love that.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
like from the get-go, so the value of what I was getting was very instilled in me. My mother and I went to New York when I was 14, and I trained at the school for that whole summer. And the Joffrey 2, which was the second company of the Joffrey Ballet, Sally Bliss and Maria Grande, they saw me and they wanted me to stay then. And well, I was a bit too young. So I went back to Florida and I competed in the International Dance Competition of the Americas and won that competition. And they wanted me to go to
Wow.
Jackson and do all these things.
Wow.
Yet Joffrey was calling me. So I went back the next summer and I was handpicked by Mr. Joffrey himself to come to his very sort of specialized summer intensive in San Antonio.
Nice.
And
Nice.
when I was there, they actually at the time, I was going through shifts in my own body and puberty and
Yeah.
all of that,
Yeah.
and they weren't as positive, even though I was put in all learning all the lead roles. They were not as positive because there was this whole body type thing. So that's a reality. And that's something that, I'd love to talk about as well as we get along. I was,
Yes.
of course, devastated. But Edith Daddario, my angel at the Joffrey Ballet School, she ran that school for forever. She said, nope, you're going to come. You're going to train with us. You're going to train with Meredith Bayless, who was teaching at the school, and Francesca Corporal. And you're going to come and you're going to train here. And we're going to work on all the things that they wanted me to work on. So my mother, sort of against all odds, letting your 15-year-old daughter move
Oh
to New
my
York
gosh.
by herself was and again, we didn't have all of the technology that we have
No,
today.
it was scary. And the city was scary back then.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, but I had Edith Daddario, and there were a lot of dancers sort of in the same boat, maybe not as young, but that were coming to train
Okay.
at the school. And so my mother, she let me go. And again, we did all the fundraising that we could, and I moved in with another dancer in the school. I got a job at Balducci's, was like right, next to the Joffrey Ballet School where we all worked. And I started training, and then very quickly, just a few months in, was invited to be a part of the Joffrey Ballet concert group, which was directed by Jim Snyder, the artistic director. And this was the school's sort of touring pre-professional company.
Gotcha.
And so it was sort of a way into the Joffrey too. So I started traveling and touring 3 months at a time. We get in a van and we tour
How old
all
were
over
you? How
the
old were you at that
I was
time?
15. I was
Gosh.
15 and then turning
Wow.
16. So, I really just started my career that way. And, we danced six, works in an evening, and we danced every piece, so it was like just the most incredible way to get that stage experience and that
Yeah. Cut your teeth.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, the directors changed at the Joffrey too. Richard England and Jeremy Blanton became the artistic directors, and they saw me perform, and they immediately took me into the Joffrey too. And
Wow.
so I was there for maybe a year and a half. And Mr. Joffrey, Joffrey was known to give emerging choreographers their big break, Twyla Tharp being
Yes.
one of them,
Yes.
Deuce Coupe. He invited this young choreographer named Mark Heim to create a piece on the Joffrey too, and he did. It was called The Gardens of Boboli, and he made me the featured role in that. And Mr. Joffrey saw that and took the ballet into the company and took me into the company at the same time. So, just again,
Okay.
like those people and those, sometimes you get those no's, but it doesn't mean never. Other people believe in you, and yeah, it was a very special time because I learned so deeply about what dance was for me and what I needed to do in order to achieve my goals. It was that determination and sort of that belief in oneself, and of course with the support of others. So I knew very young that dance was, I had to do it. It was like I had to. There was no other
Yeah.
avenue, nothing else that I wanted. And so I was lucky enough to have those people in my life that created a path for me
Yeah.
to
I have a couple of questions on that. So, when you were so young, you were just age 7, and you ended up in the hands of very capable people. So you were very lucky to be in a space where you had professionals who had been in the industry, who understood, who had the connections. So, not everyone has that space. So it is so important, I think, for parents to seek out. Like in your case, it was kind of like, I'm going with my friend. This is just going to be fun. And you got lucky, right? But if the affinity is there, do you agree, or I don't know, what is your take on where a parent takes their child. If they find that they have this wonderful ability, talent, affinity, love, passion at a super young age, and they're not in the right place, is it a time to maybe look toward a school or a program that has people who have been in the industry? I find that that's the case. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I have two things to say about that. With my own children, I tried to expose them to as much as I could to see, because they didn't know, and I think that that's the first. And there are many ways that one can find that. There are community programs. I mean, look at Misty Copeland. She was at the
Totally.
was in girls club and found her passion. So
Mm-hmm.
so there are avenues, and just again, exposure, just allow, as much as you can to let the kids try as many things as they want. And sometimes they will have, a short-term sort of like love for something, and then they're ready to move on. And that's
True.
where, with my mother, she gave me sort of that option. Okay, let's fulfill this and then we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I've also, in my time here in Detroit, which is part of the later part of this story, but teaching at so many different academies and leading summer intensives and guest teaching around the world. I always have that open door policy. If parents do want to speak with me about these types of things, I have always never, ever turned that down, because of how I was guided and my mother was guided. We were lucky. So I always try to pay it forward in that way. There have been instances where there have been students that have so much of that talent and they really want to go in this direction. It's like, okay, then that means you might have to move and leave and go to a school that is really focused in on your goals. And
Yeah.
they have done that and found great success. So sometimes it's necessary to seek out other environments, with platforms like this, and hopefully people paying it forward. Professionals that have gone through it are creating that open door
Yes,
when they're
absolutely.
teaching. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think that's great that you are, willing to talk to parents when you're doing all of these other programs, because I think sometimes there's this separation. Parents feel like they can't come up to people and ask a question. And it's so important that they do, especially if they know that their child has the affinity and they want to kind of lift them and give them opportunity. There has to be that, because I know from being involved with the convention world or those types of programs, it's difficult because there's sometimes hundreds of kids that are being taught. So as a parent, you feel like, well, it's not my place to ask. I need to sit back. But sometimes you need to kind of, put on your big girl pants and go and try
Yeah.
to talk to someone, right?
It
Um,
can't hurt to ask, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. So now you're 15 and you're going on tour. Well, 14 moving to the city or going to the city. You obviously had a parent who was extremely supportive. I don't know that every parent, especially at that time frame, that a parent would have been comfortable enough. So they must have been very, very, confident in your ability to be your own person and to make your own decisions and to know right from wrong, all of those types of things, right? So, what do you think were your attributes, other than maybe those I just mentioned, that helped you survive that? Because you're
Mhm.
talking about culture within, right? Parents consider that. They're thinking they send their kids off to college and they have an RA that kind of keeps track of everybody, or is supposed to. You know what I mean? And here you are in this setting. Like, how much of the time were you left alone? What attributes do you feel you had as a young person? Not everyone's ready at 14 or 15.
True. Very true. And I think that I was so disciplined from, I mean, my mother would always say, like, she never had to like really do much of anything. Like I just had that personality, I was very, very disciplined, very focused. And I think also because I had to work for my, I had to I was like cleaning the bathrooms, and I was doing things that really helped me understand the value. And so I never been afraid of hard work. And even, and I was alone all the time. I mean, I went to New York alone. So I had obviously my structure within this, the classes I was taking at the Joffrey School, and then I was working at Balducci's. So I was pretty busy. So again, too, really making sure there's not too much free time.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Sure.
I was always incredibly dedicated, focused, disciplined. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I just really knew what I wanted, and I was very aware of sort of my actions in terms of like if I want this to happen, I got to make it happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to just be given to me.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just a really healthy awareness of that. And I made a lot happen for myself, obviously with the help of others, but you have to have a lot of that self-discipline and focus. I was so
Yeah,
focused.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said for even grit. You know what I mean? To be able to be in that space and be resilient and be, focused enough to deal with the daily and the criticism and the push and all those things. You have to kind of feed off of that and love that. And, you can't be that kid who, oh, she looked at me crooked, I'm going to walk out of the room and cry. There's that piece of it too that I think is so important, that they must have seen it at an early age. And obviously your mentors from an early age were so, they were all people in the industry, so they tend to, understand. And I think there's a different style of teaching sometimes in those spaces that people don't realize that is uplifting and loving. And even if they're being tough and they're disciplining you to, to want, and they need, and they want you, but you also want to be that technically correct and work that hard, they instill it in a positive way, I think.
I mean, I also had many teachers that were not very positive, though. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I'll be very honest. I mean, it was sort of in that sort of old school sort of approach that hopefully we are dismantling every day, because I didn't always run across the most positive
Okay. Interesting.
teachers.
Okay.
So the resilient part, I think, is a really important aspect. I definitely very resilient, but also just respect for the people in the room. I mean, I was brought up that way, that, there's a
True.
respect and an understanding that those that have come before us, those that have done it, there's something to learn in every situation, even though
Hmm.
it might not be there might be moments where it's not positive, or you're hearing things that you don't want to hear. But,
Yeah.
I always had, that was definitely instilled in me too, that respect
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
my,
Yeah. That's so important. Yeah. Same. Yeah. That's interesting. So, okay. So now you're still a minor and
yes,
you're out on tour.
yes.
So was there someone that was responsible for you in that touring space? Was there a wrangler? Was there a, someone, I don't know, today they would call it a wrangler on Broadway, taking care of the kids and making sure they're in the right place at the right time? Or were you on your own?
On my own with the company. I mean, our artistic director was, he was driving the van, but that was kind of it. I mean, so again,
Okay.
I was already pretty grown up, and now, of course, when I run my summer programs, every minor has a chaperone. I mean, I look back at some of it, I'm like, well, they,
It was a different place and time.
it definitely was. So I've learned from that too, as I create my programs, and the things that I, as a parent, and would, and as a director of anything, ensuring that there is that overseeing.
Sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about the educational programs that you're involved in specifically, and yours specifically at this point is kind of a good segue?
Sure. So yeah, so then, I got into Joffrey too, then was brought into the main company, and was there, danced with the main company for about 8 years. And then I got really severely injured. At the time I was engaged to my now husband. We're living on a boat in New York City. Of course, through my years in New York City, I lived in, like, I don't know, 35, 6 different places, and all of
Have
them.
you? Have you?
Yeah.
So
Because,
you were living on a boat?
oh yes, we lived on a boat on the 79th Street Boat Basin. Uh-huh.
I love that.
Had our kids and raised our kids until we came to Detroit. Um, and my husband and I, he started his own representation agency called World Arts. And so together we created that company. And, I was injured. We decided, okay, I didn't think I would dance again. We're going to have our kids. We're going to really focus in on our business. And this is where we met Dwight, Rhoden, and Desmond Richardson.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and representing Complexions Contemporary Ballet, along with
No.
Duato's company, and Les Ballet de Monte Carlo, Les Ballet Africain, the Joffrey, Washington. I mean, we represented companies from all around the
Yes, I
world.
saw that. That's amazing. That had to be
Yeah.
so exciting and such a wonderful time, though, to be
Oh,
involved with all of
incredible.
those amazing
Oh,
world-renowned companies.
amazing.
The
Bringing them.
people.
Oh, yes, producing and then of course booking their tours and and then and getting to know Dwight and Desmond and I was then teaching at the Joffrey School. I was, back well enough to do that, and Edith DiDario had asked me to come on as faculty. So that's where I started my teaching career, was at the Joffrey School, right where I
Okay.
started, so that was
Okay.
really quite beautiful. And then Dwight and Desmond were like, hey, come on in the room, come hang out with us, come dance with us. Cause I was, recovered. And so
Wow.
I get in the room with them, and it was just like the most intense experience. So incredible, dancing with people like Jody Gates and Valerie Madonia and all these people that I had danced in the Joffrey with,
Right.
now with Complexions, and of course, the genius of Dwight and Desmond, and getting to know them.
Mm-hmm.
So we were working with them, through World Arts, and then I started working with them, professionally as a dancer, and we were on a tour in Colorado, and we had just come back to the city. We were rehearsing at City Center, and Elizabeth Parkinson comes down to say hello. And she says hi to me and hi to Dwight and Desmond, because she had also danced with Complexions here and there. And she was upstairs rehearsing with Twyla Tharp. And she's like, hey, we just got back from tour. We're getting ready to start this workshop. And Ashley Tuttle, who was also in the company, had just broken her foot. And she said, Twyla, we really need somebody like ASAP. Do you want to come audition? You should come audition. So I go upstairs and I auditioned for Twyla Tharp, and she ends up giving me the job to sort of like fill in for Ashley while they
Okay.
workshop, which would then become Movin Out. And so I had been on tour I had only been with Complexions for maybe a year. And, of course they understood, they were like, oh my God, you got to
Yeah.
go, can't turn down. And did the whole workshop. And once the backers all decided, okay, we're going to take this to Broadway,
Mm-hmm.
Twyla invited me to come in as the dance captain. And then I of course eventually did both lead roles and was full switch
Yes.
and had that whole time on Broadway. And then in between all of that, we had been booking our companies at a theater here in Detroit called the Detroit Music Hall, and also the Opera House. And we were here with one of our companies, and the then president of Music Hall said to Vince, my husband, Vince Paul, said, I'm stepping down. Why don't you throw your hat in the ring? Because, we're doing this big nationwide search. And he did. Long story short, he got the job. Movin Out had just closed. And we, of course, we still had World Arts, but this was like just such a next step for him. So we were like,
Mm-hmm.
our kids, this is a famous story because we're on our boat, right? And it's right there, and you're on, you see the promenade, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
trees and whatever. And I look out, and there was kids lined up waiting to climb the tree. And I was like, wow, that's such a New York City thing. Like they're waiting to climb a tree, like, because
Metaphor.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, honey, maybe we should think about you taking that job, because, our children at the time were 8 and 9. We're like, okay, they've had their city experience. Let's.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to Detroit for this position that my husband took with Music Hall. For me, it was like I knew nobody, right? So I'm like, oh my goodness, I just had this career on Broadway and with
Right.
Complexions and the Joffrey, and I'm like, okay, what am I? And Wayne State University, Dr. Doug Reisner invited me to come stage a Twyla Tharp work at
Mm-hmm.
university, and I did. And then they invited me, and long story short, ended up having, full-time position, and ended up directing the program at Wayne State University. But during that time, I had said to Dwight and Desmond, I'd said, it would be amazing if we brought the Complexions summer intensive experience here to Detroit. Wayne State is ready to like make it happen. So we started in 2012 and started the Detroit Summer Intensive, which was the only one that had gone outside of New York City at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just became this huge, really successful experience. And this is where between my teaching at Wayne State and teaching in all of the academies, and then running this summer intensive, really is where my love for education and having that space to really dig in and mentor students of all different ages, whether it's, 10 and 11-year-olds all the way up to college age students. So that's just a quick run through there of all of that. But that the educational component is so important, because as I was mentioning earlier about sort of dismantling a little bit of that, the opportunity for me to really hone in on my own viewpoints and the paying it forward part, of course.
Yeah.
But also just starting to see, how important it is we see dancers and movement artists as the whole being, and not just the physical aspects, the mental, the emotional. So just very grateful
Absolutely.
at all of that.
Yeah, yeah. So how important do you think, through this journey that you just described, how important do you think saying yes to things was to you, where you ended up? And did you have moments where you thought, should I do that? Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe, or were you just like, yes, woman, all the way through the process? Do you know what I mean? Because there's this space that creatives, which artists are, whether they're the performer or on the creative team of a project, but it's tough sometimes when different things are being thrown at them and they're not sure what to say yes to. And I find with a lot of my clients, especially the young adults who they're either in college or they've graduated collegiate programs, or they've been floating around New York trying to make it and haven't run into the right people, haven't found the right mentors. And some of them have this, of course, you have to be careful and you want to be in projects that are safe and appropriate. That goes without saying. But some of them, I feel, don't always say yes to some of the smaller projects that would come up, like with their friends or with other artists, to kind of fill in that space between jobs, things that actually can help them to continue to network, to kind of increase their ability, kind of throw a wider net. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, how important was that in your process? Obviously, it sounds like, you were at the top of the heap. You auditioned, they wanted to put you in the lead role. You had those opportunities because of your talent and ability. And many people are in that space, but others might not be the right type. They might have the right talent. So we have these other spaces that we could talk about: type versus talent versus, you know what I mean? That piece of it when you're trying to audition for something you really, really want. But then there's this other side of it, to build the resume, to continue to network, to continue to do all those things. Was it a yes for you all the time? And how do you feel about that if you were to guide someone who is, let's say, a young adult?
I just love that you said that, because that is absolutely what I say, especially to all my college students. Say yes.
I do.
You don't know, like so many things that I've done, there's no training for that. There's no certificate. There's no, I'm just like, I'll figure it out. So I think that there's a real worry of failure too. Like failure it's like, you know what, just say yes and get the experience, because that's the other thing of the value system we were talking about earlier, like really valuing. It might not look like, oh, the end result's going to be like this big thing. Say yes. If it comes to you, say yes, do it and stick to it. Don't pull out before it's done. Like really don't burn the bridge. You
Absolutely.
can't imagine how interconnected we all are. A great example is, when I was dance captain with Movin Out, I ran all the auditions for the, 3.5 years or whatever we were on Broadway. And, with the union, sometimes you have to hold an audition and there aren't even any spots, right? Or there might be a spot before it's like got to fit into a costume, or it's got to be a certain look, or you never know. Many people, and I just love this, I would see people come again and again and again to audition, and they would not get a part. They would not get a job with Movin Out or whatever, but they'd come back. And a lot of those people ended up getting a part eventually, because they kept saying yes to their desire, and they never stopped, because you don't know what people are looking for sometimes in an audition. And when it's seemingly a rejection, again, you have to have a real sense of who you are and what your goals are, because it's also very subjective, right? So every time you go and say yes and do something, you're gaining some valuable experience, how to audition, right? How to even manage like waiting in the line or being in the room or learning a combination fast, or, all of that adds up. So if you look at everything as an advantage, and this is what I try to live by too, everything, if you can really trust that your world is kind of taking care of you, you know, like everything, just, you might not know, and you might not see it, but if you can just kind of believe
Yes.
that
Yes.
and take that viewpoint is
Hmm.
something I think really important as well too, because it is hard not to get, a little sad or despondent, but keep working, keep seeking out, especially the relationships you talked about, because many of my students who went through the program at Wayne State, they went through 4 years together, they've been creating work together, they're in class together, and guess what? Those are the relationships that you're going to make greater things with. So there's so much interconnectedness that young people don't necessarily understand, I think, right off the bat. But the saying yes, I said yes to everything. I really did, sometimes too many times. But I like to be really, really busy and have lots of things going on.
Hmm.
And I have been asked to do things that most people would say I was not qualified to do. But guess what?
Yeah, but you know what?
And
That
yes, and you
That's
figure it
so
out.
true. It's almost like you have to, and I hate to use the cliche term, fake it till you make it. But there's places
So
where you're given the opportunity, sometimes because they like your personality, they like the way that you handle yourself, and they feel that you're going to be right for the project. And if you're sitting back going, "Oh, I don't know, this person's more talented than me," whatever, and you say no, that's crazy. Like you might as well move into it and move
yeah,
forward, The other
totally.
side of it, I think the other side of it too, you mentioned, being busy, right? And I think you really do have to have the capability to juggle a lot.
The work ethic. I mean, plain and simple. When we talk about transferable skills, right? When you think about, and I talk to parents a lot about this, because not everybody who's in that dance class is going to have a professional career in dance or wants one.
Yes.
But what they're learning, that focus, discipline, self-control, work ethic, is like, those are the valuable skills, I think, above and beyond anything. So if you have
Absolutely.
those skills, you can like kind of go anywhere. I mean, yes, there are things
Hmm.
obviously you need to, be specialized in
Yeah.
and get degrees for, but in essence, that those work ethic. And I'm one of those people, like, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it.
Hmm.
The nth
Yeah.
degree, because that's
Yeah.
just me. That's the way
Hmm.
I like to live my life. And I think
Hmm.
that's really important too, as young people. It's just like really starting to, instead of like hearing it all from the outside of how they're supposed to be, or how it's all supposed to work out, let's go inward, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Who do you want to be in all this? You are the architect of your life. It's
Yes.
and all these decisions and choices that you make every day. My other favorite saying is, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I talk a lot about this. It's like, even how make your bed, and how
Yes, yes.
it's like everything it all
Yes.
adds up to
Yeah.
how you want your life to be. It's
Hmm.
not,
Hmm.
can't just disassociate those things. It
Yes.
all like part of the fabric of who you are.
Yeah, how you're wired, so to speak. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about, I'd love to hear, because you took over the lead role in Moving Out. So when you had your Broadway debut, what was that like? You were in there, and you were first hired to be the dance captain, and were you in the ensemble at that time, and then they moved you into the lead role, or did you just give us some details about that? Only because I think people really, in general, especially parents who are looking at this, maybe their kids are on the road to Broadway and they're starting to do some summer stock, or they got a national tour and they're trying to kind of figure it out. And the whole idea of understudying or being put into that space, and the time that is not available sometimes for rehearsal, like, talk about your experience and what you went through in that whole, from getting involved with Moving Out to doing the lead role.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, back to when I did the workshop, is I
Hmm.
stepped in for one of the lead roles. Yeah, so I did that lead role, the Judy role, throughout the workshop. Ashley recovered, and she went back into her part. I came
Okay.
in as dance captain. and full swing. So part of those responsibilities were obviously I'm, helping maintain the female part, tracks of the show. I'm teaching those parts to people that are coming in. And whenever there's a need, I would go in and perform those roles. Moving Out, because it was so challenging and so hard for the main roles, the people in, the leading 6 leading roles, and for the
Yes.
ensemble. 8 shows was almost virtually impossible, so there were 3 casts of the lead roles in terms of the Brenda and Tony roles, and John Celia's role as well, the Eddie role.
Interesting. I
And
didn't know that. So
yeah,
these were equally, they were hired equally as the lead to rotate, or were they that you
no,
had the 2 leads and then they were they were like standbys or understudying the leads?
well, it was different for some of them. Some of them had different agreements in their contracts.
Okay.
Some came in as ensemble, but knew that they were probably going to end up doing the lead
Mm-hmm.
role. But as
Mm-hmm.
time moved on, it was very apparent that, we had to start rotating because it was just physically impossible
Mm-hmm.
to do 8 shows a week,
Mm-hmm.
because it was just so grueling. And so it was wonderful because it gave so many people opportunity. And
Yes.
but for me, so I would be rotated in on the Judy track here and there. But when it came to getting to do the Brenda role, it was just under like an injury situation and an illness situation. So I myself and Rhonda Jesus learned that part like the night before, and we went on and did it. Performed the role.
What?
So yeah, very little rehearsal. Yes. Yes, it was one of those emergency situations. So here's another yes, saying yes, because it was just something that needed to happen in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And we said yes. So it's not an ideal way, but I've certainly been watching the role and knew it in terms of enough of it. But yeah, we went on, that next day in the matinee. But in my career in the Joffrey, it was very similar. I loved to watch everything. Like I was always in the wings watching the
Mm-hmm.
ballet that I wasn't even in.
Yeah.
So I could learn quickly. And I just fearless, like, yeah, put me on. Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? It was again, I was just a bit wired that way. So
Yeah. 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 And you had the confidence, obviously, in yourself as a performer, and not everyone has that. Hence the reason some people get hired and some people don't. You have to have that. You have to be smart, on top of all of this, right? Okay. So, Moving Out, let's keep going chronologically.
sure.
Moving Out ends, closes.
Mhm.
And what was next on the resume? What was your next move? Were you in Detroit yet at that
No, no,
point?
no.
You were still in New York. Okay.
In New York, we had, like I said, our representation agency.
Yes.
Moving Out closed, and this is when we were traveling back and forth with our companies, and we came to Detroit with Les Ballets Africains, and that's when my husband was, they pursued my husband to, throw his hat in the ring for the job
Yes.
at the Music Hall Center for the Performing Arts.
Okay.
So it really became then, it was like we this was a huge move for us because I had been in New York for 22 years. My husband had been in New York for 20 years. And, we were city people and our children too. And it was living on a boat in Manhattan was a very unique experience. We had our office space on 57th Street where World Arts was. We had, 5 employees, and it was all just it was incredibly stressful,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, but but we had done kind of everything that we wanted to do, so it was really interesting, the timing, because we could have kept going. I mean, for me, Moving Out was so unique and special. I wasn't seeking out another Broadway show or any of that.
Yeah, it definitely,
Yeah,
yeah. It
yeah,
was definitely almost like looking at your whole resume and everything you've done. It definitely was kind of like, oh, let me go over here and do this. That was cool. Okay, let me get
yes.
back on track in what I love and what I've done and what I was made to do. It's just really cool that you did that.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. So
Yeah.
grateful for it.
Yeah.
So when he got the job and we moved here, I was just like, but then I was also asked to be the director of dance at the music hall as well. So one of the first things I did when we moved here, I just wanted to get to know the community. And so I just got in my car and I would drive and I would visit studios. I'd introduce myself. I'd teach master classes.
Nice.
And there was this amazing woman, she's still with us, Eunice Moore, who was heading at the time, the Detroit public school system had an incredible dance program. And it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a flourishing dance program. So I was going and visiting all the schools, and I put together a benefit for dance, directed a benefit for dance and curated called Stars of Ballet and Broadway. And so I brought out the Movin'
I
Out
love
band,
that.
Billy Joel's Movin' Out band, Donna
Oh, you
McKechnie
did? You
came.
brought the band out?
Yes, I brought the band.
No.
Donna McKechnie came because she's from here, from
Yeah.
Michigan. And Ted Levy and Marshall Davis Jr., who were with Black and Blue. I brought out Wendy Whalen and stars. So it stars about
That's
stars of
amazing.
Broadway and created a program leading up to it called the Future Stars of Ballet and Broadway. And I opened it up to the community and really wanted to create a space that brought everyone together, because everyone is so like they're all in their silos, right? Of course,
So true. So true.
Academies. And I wanted to bring everyone to the music hall, give them this training
How
at
cool is
no
that?
cost. And so we did. It was called Camp Broadway, which was a program that the music hall had been bringing in. And then I asked Rhonda Jesus to come and choreograph an original work for the Future Stars of Ballet. So we had our Future Stars of Broadway, Future Stars of
Very
Ballet.
cool.
So I curated and directed that for 3 years. And I also performed, Twyla gave us permission to perform the last duet in Movin' Out. And
Oh, no way.
from the Joffrey Ballet. And so those were like sort of my last performing years.
Okay. Okay.
But again, creating that space, that educational and pre-professional experience and opportunity for as many that I could. And then from there, that's when Wayne State came into my life and offered me a position. So, and they started asking me to choreograph, and that was wonderful as well. I choreographed and brought our college dance department to the nationals at ACDA and all that kind of stuff. Brought Dwight in to stage Hissy Fits, which is one of the signature works of Complexions, and lots of different guest artists. And then I curated another show and directed called 313 Choreography Expo. So it was similar in the sense of like creating a platform for emerging choreographers, highlighting how Detroit has influenced other cities and how other cities have influenced. So I would bring in
Interesting.
companies, local companies, dance companies, and then professional dance companies from other cities, and then gave opportunity for emerging choreographers to create work and to have it performed. So, always looking at it in that sort of context of like, how can I use my energy, time, expertise in,
Yeah. It sounds like, your connections, to try to kind of bring the professional side into this community and give it's that same mission. You know what I mean? Like to try to give new talent, children, adults, people that really have the ability and talent and passion, and give them the connections and give them just open the doors and get rid of the gatekeepers,
right,
and let people see and
financial
understand.
support, the venue, the stage,
That's
the
crazy.
time, which are all like when I was at Wayne State, I always say the three most valuable things that you have right now that you're not going to have when you leave. You have time, you have space, and you have dancers. These are the things like when you leave these doors, you're going to have to figure out how to create that.
Yes.
Very expensive and
Yes.
and all that. So so the music hall on my husband and I's vision and intention of really utilizing the stage and the space and the infrastructure to be able to provide that. Provide it for the aspiring dancers, choreographers, these emerging companies that really need that support.
Yes.
In that
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really an amazing story. I just can't get over your whole just the whole arc of your life and everything. You know what I think is great too, as you're talking and explaining all this? I think it's wonderful that you did this for a year and a half, then you did that for 3 years, then you did this for, that's kind of that says a lot about who you were when you were younger, even. Do you know what I mean? That you're like, no, I'm going to look at this next opportunity. What can I do here? How can I help? How can I kind of get to that next place and do something important that not
Mhm.
everybody does, because a lot of people just try to sit in a comfortable space. So I think that's really exciting. I think it's really great too that you and your husband actually have worked together all this time to like lift and do all these things. I had no idea. My mistake. I should have done more research, but do you know what I'm saying? I had no idea that that was part of the space that you were in, which is really cool. So what are you doing now? Like what's going on? Like where what basket are you in now? Like what's
Well,
happening?
I was with Wayne State for 13 years. So I was there as a full-time professor, and then they did ask me to direct the dance program, which I did for 5 years. And
Okay.
and all along, I would try to find some time here and there to run out with Complexions. And as their rehearsal director, obviously I was still doing all of the summer intensives. And Dwight and Des had asked me to be the director of their academy, which is a traveling academy in essence. And so I had been already obviously very involved in the Detroit. So about 3 years ago, I started to help out in that way and really expand the academy. We've grown it by about 30%, which is really exciting. And then little over a year ago, I was like, it's time. Our kids are, they're grown, they're out of the house. My experiences at Wayne State were tremendous and wonderful. And I was like, it's time for what's the next thing? And Dwight and Desmond were just like, okay, would you come and be our associate artistic director? And I was just like, so, I mean, I still
Were you like blown away that
so, so blown away.
happened?
Like I never expected, I was just excited to come back as a rehearsal director. But then
Mm-hmm.
they invited me into, because we've known each other for 25 years, and all the different iterations as a dancer, as rehearsal director,
All
academy.
of it.
And so it just felt like a really great fit.
Mm-hmm.
We all complement each other so well. So
Mm-hmm.
I just celebrated my first full year as associate artistic director
That's
of the
amazing. That's
company.
just crazy. So do you go back and forth to the city to do
Mhm.
that? That's what you do? You go
Yeah.
back and forth? Okay. Okay.
Yes, I'm in
So,
the city quite a bit. I call myself a Neutroider. I made up that name, like
okay, I love that.
New Yorker, Detroiter, Neutroider.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, that's so great. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about that job, just to give some people, parents, people who don't understand, because also deal with a lot of clients who they're young adults, their parents are trying to figure this out. They don't understand the process and how you get there. And obviously this is opening up their eyes. But also what's involved if their kids wanted to become an artistic director for someone or become a rehearsal director. Maybe talk about what that is in the concert dance world.
Yeah, in the concert dance world, well, first, gaining that experience as a dancer
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely, it's not. I would say for the most part, you would need that
Yeah, it's
experience,
essential. Yeah.
um, for sure. But also administratively, because it really does cross both sides, artistically and administratively.
Okay.
So my responsibility is like I'm in charge of the whole schedule. I work very closely, obviously, with Dwight and Desmond and our executive director, Moadi Dabinga,
Mm-hmm.
and our fabulous booking agent, Margaret Selby, in her office. So together, we're just really piecing it all together. We have our season at the Joyce. So I help Dwight and Desmond, with the guest artists that we're bringing in. I do all of the sort of the work and scheduling and making sure all those details are happening. I'm in the space with the dancers quite often. I'm teaching them company class. I'm in rehearsal with them, 6 hours a day, coaching and, making sure that new people are learning their parts and getting us performance ready. Um, I'm also, working with the company manager and our associate company manager, our director of production. So I'm sort of overseeing the team,
Yeah.
and just helping coordinate all of those aspects. I'm on tour with the company. So I'm also, like teaching company class and then out in the front, making sure all the technical elements with our lighting supervisor and our stage manager, all of that is happening. So, taking all the notes, the meticulous notes, and just making sure everything is ready to go. I'm directing the academy, so I'm working with our academy manager and, with all of the audition processes, getting all the auditions for the company put together.
This is a huge undertaking.
Huge
You're
undertaking.
literally, yeah. And I
And
feel
then
like your
also,
left brain and your right brain is functioning all the time. It seems
yeah,
like you have to have that analytical side that is capable of keeping all the ducks in a row as well, right? Because
yeah.
it's not just the artistry of it.
Mhm.
Wow, that's
Yeah, there's a
impressive.
lot of admin work that I do. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then also just, as we continue to grow and expand, creating partnerships, we partnering up with ABT JKO, and we're partnering with Howard University. They're coming in with our pre-pros uh, for our Joyce season. They'll be performing
Nice.
with us. And, all of the relationships that we hope to, continue to collaborate with. So there's a lot of building of the future as we are also
Oh my
maintaining and,
gosh.
fulfilling
Yes.
all the plans that
Yes.
we made last year in the present moment. We just had
Yes.
our leadership discussion today about our 30th anniversary. So that, already in planning for that. So
Wow. And is
yeah,
that
there's
coming
plenty
up
of-
this coming year, or when is
no,
that?
we're in our we're starting our 29th season uh,
Okay.
on Monday. And so, yeah, but we're already in the planning stages for our 30th anniversary. So,
Wow.
yeah, there is. I mean, it feels really wonderful to have sort of, it's like feels like the perfect job after,
Yeah.
with all the experiences, and able to
Yes.
sort of like pull from all of it and
Yeah. I'm so happy
good
for you
times.
that
Oh,
you're
thank
in
you.
this space. This is just an amazing story. Oh my gosh. So, if someone wanted to, come see and support the company, can you talk about how they can do that? If you have, if there's any kind of ways that they can do that, whether that's through donations or to come see the company, like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, Complexions is a New York City-based company. Dwight and Desmond created this company 29 years ago, and it is singular in style. If when you come and
Yes.
see Complexions, it's Complexions.
Yes.
And Dwight and Desmond have created our own technique called Neek. This is what we are training all of our students within the academy and what is now being brought into the ABT JKO school. And so we're really expanding that. But they're an American company. They are the quintessential, like everything that you think about in terms of like when you talk about grit, you talk about perseverance, you talk about bravery and courage, and like creating something that has just never been.
Hmm.
It's singular in that way.
Yes.
Diversity, inclusivity, all of this is it's always been who they are and what this
Hmm.
company stands for. So we're super proud. I'm so honored to be a part of it. And yeah, I mean, it's a New York City based company that, like any dance company, like just the support as even as small as one might think, it means so much to us because we're just constantly trying to, provide more for our dancers who are our everything. Our company
Yeah.
artists are truly everything. They're just unbelievable. And so any little bit helps. I mean, we have our new works fund. So we have for our new works that are coming to the stage at the Joyce. So donating for that, it would be incredible. Donating to the academy so we can continue to give scholarships to students. We give a tremendous amount of scholarship to students from around the world.
Hmm.
So you can go to our website,
Okay.
complexionsdance.org or complexionsacademy.com.
Okay.
Those are wonderful places, and oh my gosh, it would mean so much to us. Any little bit, we would so appreciate it, and it's needed, especially after the pandemic. The arts
Oh,
really, really
took a hit.
are still trying to recover,
Hmm.
and so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So, how many, this just came into my head while you were talking. How many company members are there? Do you have a specific number I know some companies do. Some of the the world renowned companies, they have a specific number that they stick to, and others do not. So how many people, how many artists, dancers are on the company in a regular season, let's say?
In the regular season, it's between 16 and 18. And then
Okay.
we have between 2 and 4 apprentices.
Okay.
So yeah, and our company is like a company of soloists. I mean, there is no sense of like
Hmm.
hierarchy, and everybody's featured, and they're just, I mean, they blow my mind even to this day. Like every day that I'm in rehearsal with them, I'm still like just kind of blown away. Yeah, it's truly incredible. They're what they are able to do and how they do it, the humanity and the heart and soul. We just came from Jacob's Pillow, was our first
Hmm.
time
I
Pillow,
saw that.
out houses, and which was wonderful to be there. Dwight and Desmond are creating works that are so timely as well, that not only are incredibly entertaining, but are also really important in terms of what's happening in the world. And then the way that they create, it's always an invitation for us to sort of just think about it. It's always an invitation of like, there's always a better way, there's always a brighter side. And that's what I love as well too, because we don't shy away from some of the meatier subjects, and that's what art is, a platform for that, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm really proud of the work that everybody is doing. The company, we just continue to grow the company, and we tour a tremendous amount. And that's another interesting, I grew up touring as well with the Joffrey Ballet. And that's the thing about too, for young artists that are listening, because touring is it's a whole nother set of skills. Is because you are going to a different stage, a different hotel, a different city. You have travel, you have to deal with, how do I travel and then perform the next day, and all of
Yes.
those additional challenges that go along
Hmm.
with it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's definitely something that is a unique experience. And our company members, those that have not toured, it's great that I can, and the senior members can help them along. The advice that I would give to start off with, I love that we touch on saying yes, but there is that sense of humility that one must have in terms of not being a full cup, right? You can't be a full cup. You got to empty out, and you have to be able to receive. Now, it doesn't mean you have to take it all and believe it all, but if you're seeking advice and someone's giving advice to you, just try it on for a minute. Also, too, I have had a lot of students wanting to go to New York, and it's that pre-planning. Because sometimes if we're not pre-planning and saving that money, get your Acorns app or whatever, do the things like really have a solid, like big picture goal. And if that's your goal, to be on Broadway or to be in a ballet company or a dance company, concert dance or commercial world, you want to move to LA, there are organizations that you can seek out, but really understanding that what you are going to do to plan for your success. Yes, you can look at a movie and they go to New York and they get found, but that's most of the time not going to happen. Like, are you going to New York? Do you have enough money? I always say to my students, have enough money saved for a year of classes. Because what ends up happening is, go to New York, you've got to get 3 jobs, and now you're not taking class, and now you're not in training. Go to an audition and you're not in the best physical shape or readiness to nail that audition because you're working the jobs. So
Yep.
that pre-planning is so important. And, I came from a family of like very little money. And I know it can be really challenging if there are financial constraints. That's why that pre-planning, we did everything like we could figure out to do, garage sales and what have you. But so finding people that can help support that planning is really important. Diversifying, like you were talking about earlier, diversifying your training. I mean, for sometimes with dance, you have to really be a little bit more like, there is a period of time, like some are studio hopping because they might not get what
Yes.
they want right away.
Yes.
So it's a balance. You have to balance that. If you're feeling like you're getting the good training, and you're improving and you're really putting that work in, but if it's like you're not really getting what you want right away, and jumping to different studios, that's going to be an issue, I think.
Mhm.
And just really understanding the work that goes into it. As a dancer or dance artist or anything in that physicality, you're kind of preparing, and then you're in it, and then you're preparing for the next day. So there is sacrifice. There is sacrifice for that goal, and really understanding what that is, and the willingness to make those sacrifices, to know like how to take care of your body, and maybe not doing the things that you want to be doing all the time, but you should be doing. Getting that training, doing and there's so much on YouTube, and like there's the cross training. You can like take a Pilates online,
Yes.
or there's videos. There's so many resources. That's why I say to my students, are you utilizing your resources? Every resource, there's so many resources out there. Doing the research, that's another big piece of advice. If you're going to auditions, research everything that you can. Look at the style of the company that you're, like with Complexions, we have our training programs, and many people that are ready to have a professional career, that want to be in the company, they come to our summer intensives because they know they're probably going to take class with Dwight, Desmond, or myself. They're going to be training in the style of Complexions, which is very unique and not something most people come in able to do right off the bat. They're putting themselves in the room with the people they want to work with. So that's another thing. Like, get yourself in the room with the people that you want to work with, however you can. Sometimes you just have to be bold and send an email. May I come and take company class? Oftentimes they'll say, yeah. That's another really great way to be seen. Obviously connections, there's probably somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, take that initiative and ask. Maybe it's a no, but oftentimes it's a yes, because so many artists want to give back. They want to pay it forward, but nothing can replace the work that one has to do.
That's true.
So you got to get into it. I always say opt in, just get into get into the work and make it fun. And enjoy it, because
you just hit the nail on the head. Yep, you got to do the work.
Do the work, and got to, there's no skipping the process of it. So really valuing that process, I think, is also important.
Yes, this has been wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you and all that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So.
Yes, and thank you for sharing your story, your journey. All this advice has been amazing. I'm just really excited that you were willing to meet with me today. So thank you. If you'd like to follow Meg to keep up with all that she's doing, follow her on Instagram at megpaul_dance, and join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Need more info? Visit lbctalent.com and follow me on socials at lisasolak_lbctalent. By sharing our stories, we can help other talented individuals land the career of their dreams.